Right, so Israeli insanity has now peaked, it seems, as if it hadn't already, because you better believe them when they tell you something, or else they might just lock you up now. Israel, whose government, if they privatised the truth, would basically corner the global market in lying, are saying believe the lies or it's prison for you now. Well, you'd better clap me in irons now then. I've been calling out Israeli lies on this channel for the last 16 months, and if their response to that is to threaten jail time, I'm not going to back down from that. And actually, it is going back 16 months that is the relevant part here. Of course, I'm not in Israel, am I? Israel can't arrest me. But the lie in question, because it is one specific lie that will get you incarcerated at this point, does take us back to the night of October 7th, and Israel's ongoing claims about what exactly happened that night. Despite their claims of the events of that night having more holes in them than a block of Emmental, and the fact they have blocked independent investigation, forcing the world to take them at their word, despite plenty of evidence pointing out the fact that they are indeed lying, circumstantial as that is without proper investigation, it is nonetheless compelling evidence, and it's very difficult to refute. But when I said I needn't fear jail time myself for calling out Israeli lies with regards to October 7th, Israeli bought and paid for politicians in the West may well be following suit, and at least one has already made moves in that direction. Right, so Israel being accused of lying becoming a capital offence, is it, Damo? Surely this must be some mistake, said nobody ever, because it's totally believable, isn't it? We're at that stage in the cycle of Israeli denialism now, aren't we? Sure, Hamas entered Israel and took hostages, and we should condemn them for that. The events of October 7th are very much on them. This is an academic point. This is proven. They wouldn't have hostages to hand back, otherwise would they, after all? But they wanted a hostage exchange, didn't they? Because Israel holds so many Palestinian hostages, so many more than Hamas ever took on October 7th. But no, we can't call them hostages. They're prisoners. Sure, Israel might not have charged them. They may have held them for indeterminate lengths of time. They might be minors. Heck, still taking more of them from the West Bank as we speak to replace the ones they're handing over. But if you say that to them or any Zionists supporting them, well, it's not true at all. That never happened. Are you sure about that, though? How much of that footage have we seen now? It's all showing up on our phones, isn't it? Ever since Israel went into Gaza and began starting to commit the genocide in Gaza that is now well documented, and now in the West Bank as well, as matters ramp up there even more. It's all showing up thanks to independent and foreign media journalists and social media in the area reporting on it. We know it's happening. The first genocide to ever play out in real time before all of our eyes. So how about you start telling the truth about that then? And if we go back to the events of October 7th, we have, after all, seen footage of helicopter gunships targeting people fleeing the kibbutzim and the Nova Music Festival, and we've read the reports now in foreign and alternative media who have spoken to eyewitnesses and made clear much of the atrocity was actually committed by Israeli forces, according to them, that night. So, go on, what's your next excuse going to be? Well, it wasn't us, it was Hamas, it was all them. Well, really? The Hamas plan was to come for hostages. A war crime, no denying that. As I've said, they should be condemned for that. But not for death and destruction. They didn't come for that. It isn't Hamas who, enact Hannibal directives after all, and kill their own citizens rather than see them be taken hostages. What benefit was there to killing themselves when Israel, as we know, thanks to a massive gaffe by then Israeli spokesperson Mark Regev, burned so many people that night, their own people, because when they gathered the bodies up to begin with, they accidentally counted some 200 Hamas operatives amongst their own, unable to tell the difference. So come on, what's the next stage in your denialism going to be now? Oh, they did it because they're inhuman, perhaps. They're evil. Amalek. That word Netanyahu has coughed up once or twice. Biblical reference. Why won't you believe us? It's probably because you lie with impunity, and that those lies have been proven in all manner of different bits of footage and articles that have come out from journalists on the ground. Well, that must make you an anti-Semite if you won't believe us, Sem. Well, that was bound to come up at some point, wasn't it? What next? Tears that we don't believe you? Yeah, we've seen that one too. We don't buy it. We've seen what Israel have done with our own eyes. You aren't going to Hasbara your way out of this one. We'll take your claims and we'll look into it ourselves. Well, why should we trust you to do that, Israel? You lie with impunity. You lie like a rug. What is your investigation going to be worth? Well, how dare you accuse us of lying? We'll lock you up if you keep saying that. Well, not me, sunshine. I'm not in Israel. But this is literally the page of the playbook Israel are now on. If you call their version of events from the night of October 7th dishonest, which is still not being independently investigated either because Israel won't allow that, yet we are expected to believe them. And if you do happen to be in Israel and say all of this, you now face 5 years in prison for it. Israel's version of events of the night of October 7th has been widely debunked around the world, and in Israel itself. Hence, presumably, this move now to try and stop people talking about it in Israel. Not that that's going to make any difference to what they now think and believe all of this time later, not just in Israel, but around the world. The original claims were that 1,400 people were killed on the night of October 7th by Hamas, the biggest atrocity against Jewish people since the Holocaust, as many a politician both inside Israel and out has repeatedly stated, including the Zionist shill that passes for our Prime Minister here in the UK, Keir Starmer. This, of course, later got reduced, though, to 1,200 people when Israel realised their mistake with this, that they'd included 200 Palestinians in their count, because so badly burned were the bodies that Israel didn't even know which ones were theirs and which weren't. Such was the leap to propagandise the event and justify the genocide that then followed. We're expected to believe Hamas burned 1,400 people, including 200 of their own, when all the reports from eyewitnesses imply the fires were caused by Israeli response. Israel were curiously well prepared with tanks and helicopters and soldiers. Anyone would think they knew they were coming. And indeed Egypt do claim to have warned Israel 3 weeks earlier, something they are sticking to, but Israel continued to deny, along with denying the curious weakening of local militias and the video cameras at the Erez crossing in the north of Gaza into Israel mysteriously not working that night either. And then, of course, there's the claims of rape being used as a weapon against Israelis, despite the Israeli prosecution service having not received one single complaint over that, and therefore can't prosecute anybody for that crime, a crime that apparently didn't happen, therefore. And there were so many other lies besides. All of this, without independent investigation and verification, though, continues to be circumstantial. It has come via media reports for the most part. It's very difficult to refute a lot of it. It has not been investigated independently, though. The only investigation having been done is that Israel claims to have done itself. And when it comes out with claims like this, which do not match eyewitness reports at all, and with Israel's relationship with the truth increasingly considered loose at best, the lack of independent investigation and corroboration is highly suspicious. Why will you not allow it to be done, Israel? Everything Israel have done in Gaza and are now doing in the West Bank are, we are told, by consequence for what Hamas did. If it ever comes out officially that Israel lied and Hamas are not responsible for all of those killings, perhaps, especially when Israel are accused of a share of them themselves by their own people who live near the Gaza border, amongst others, then it would pretty much nail on the case for genocide that the ICJ are currently investigating. Israel cannot afford that to ever happen, and so instead of allowing an independent investigation, they are instead criminalising the questioning of their set of events. Well, this piece of legislation came before the Knesset on Tuesday. It was sponsored by Oded Forer of the far-right Yisrael Beteinu party, which mandates a 5-year term of imprisonment for anyone who says or writes things denying the October 7th massacre with the intention of defending the terrorist organisation Hamas and its partners, expressing sympathy with them or identifying with them. The law has been based on a 1986 statute in Israel that made Holocaust denial illegal. So the events of October 7th, or denial of Israel's version of those events, is now treated in law as equivalent to Holocaust denial. Now, if that isn't weaponization of historical travesty, I don't know what is, because proper investigation is required still. The vote passed unanimously. Now, with it well known that Hamas instigated the events of October 7th, this should in theory be quite feasible to work around. Nobody is claiming they are guilt-free and innocent here. But sole responsibility for the deaths of 1,400 people being levied on them is questionable based on eyewitness reports, based on the evidence available via the media, and it could be coming to a country near you too if you aren't subject to Israel's laws. For example, here in the UK, we are already seeing the weaponization of terror legislation to gag pro-Gaza voices. Not even Hamas, but Gaza, the differentiation not seemingly an issue. With protest march campaigners like Chris Nineham of Stop the War Coalition arrested, charges now being levied against Ben Jamal for the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign, and the charging on 2 counts of supporting Hamas by campaigning for a ceasefire for Gaza, as seen in the case of Jersey-based activist Natalie Strecker, shows the Starmer regime would be completely on board with this. But so is Donald Trump. Trump has signed an executive order that permits the deportation of non-citizens, including foreign students, who support resistance groups such as Hamas and Hezbollah. So how was that going to be measured then, Trumpy? What will the guidance be? And will it be an abuse of simply being pro-Palestinian, as is the concern? Well, during his campaign, Trump committed to targeting foreign students involved in campus unrest and anti-Israel demonstrations, the likes of which we saw many of last year, particularly those expressing solidarity with Palestine for potential deportation. So there we go, pro-Palestine equals pro-Hamas, when that simply isn't true. For example, the Israel lobby will lap up all of this though, and one lobby group in the US, the World Betar Movement, has stated publicly that it is submitting lists of pro-Palestinian individuals to Trump for consideration. Whose name will be going on the list? They're writing lists, folks. Undermining all of this though, all of this slavish lickspittle bootlicking to the Israel lobby and Israeli interest, is the simple but essential fact that an independent investigation into the night of October 7th becomes even more essential, and still hasn't been done. And where are the calls coming for it? Instead, those that are bought and paid for by the Israel lobby are bending over backwards to acquiesce to Israel's version of events. All of these laws and legislation, any arrests made in line with this, wherever they happen, they're going to be unsafe, with the country laying down the law being investigated for genocide itself. Their findings do not and cannot stand up to scrutiny, and any legal heavy-handedness by bought and paid for politicians can and must be called out. And I can imagine a lot of this could end up clogging up the courts. Meanwhile, whilst we're on the subject of Trump, he's just put a big fat smile on the face of Hezbollah, can you believe? Whilst Netanyahu is tearing his comb-over out over it. For the ceasefire in Lebanon ends tomorrow. Israel is expected to leave by then. That is their deadline. And their request for an extension to that is being denied. Turning on the waterworks hasn't worked this time either, has it? Get all the details of that smack in the teeth for Netanyahu in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't already done so to help support the channel and ensure you don't miss new daily content. All very much appreciated as that is, and I will hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.